been known for many years, and there's work done in my laboratory at UCLA, at Sloan Kettering Institute, University of Texas, University of Melbourne, Cornell University, well substantiated that if you put animals on a low-calorie but super-quality diet, you can extend the lifespan substantially. In humans, if you translate that work to humans, the advice would be to gradually lose weight over about 6 years, but on a super high-quality diet until you're anywhere from 10, 20, or 30% below your own natural set point.
Can a person start this type of longevity diet at any time during their lives, or do they, for example, have to start when they're young teenagers?
Well, they shouldn't start too young, because when it started very young in animals, while it does greatly prolong the lifespan, it decreases the growth rate, and for other reasons. In humans, it can be started at any time. If you start it late in life, of course, you only get half the effect as if you start it young in life, but you get an effect at any period.
Dr. Walford, how do the animals hold up functionally that you're actually putting on these longevity diets in terms of the way they feel?
Well, they hold up very well, intellectually and with all of the tests for functional aging. For example, rats or mice get gray hair, just like people do, but they get it at a much later age if they're on this kind of a diet. The intellectual functioning holds up fine. 38-month-old mice do just as well at maze running, that is, diet-restricted 38-month-old mice. They do very well at maze running, and they test out as only being 20 to 22 months of age functionally. So their rate of mental aging has been cut in half.
No, I can see people out in the audience saying, yeah, another rat experiment. How do we know that what holds for rats and mice and other animals will actually hold for a human subject?
We don't know in the absolute sense until the experiment is done in humans, which is in process. But we can say with a high order of probability that it will hold. So you're speaking of orders of probability. Now, if you deal in the experimental translation of work from, say, rats or mice to humans, if you're dealing with a very specific effect, then you may not be able to translate it. For example, if you put animals on vitamin C or X or something, because that's a very specific effect, it may not be translatable. But if you're dealing with a very general phenomenon like development, birth, procreation, aging, then with a high order of probability, the work is directly translatable.
Why is there seemingly such a great disparity between the number of years that mouse lives versus the number of years a human being lives?
The maximum lifespan for each species is fixed unless we can regulate the clock of aging. In mouse, it's about 3 years, in man, 110. There are different things that correlate with that. For example, a mouse has a much poorer ability to repair its own DNA than man has.
DNA being the genetic material that constitutes the genes.
Yes, exactly. Man repairs his much better. He lives much longer. Chimpanzee repairs it fairly well, not as good as man. He lives half as long. Mouse doesn't repair it very well. He lives much shorter. There are a few other things that have that kind of correlation. There's another enzyme system called the mixed function oxidases, which detoxifies the body from simple organic chemicals like benzene and benzopyrene and gasoline that get into the body. This enzyme system also, its ability also correlates with lifespan.
So in other words, we know biochemically that in the long-lived animals that they have certain biochemical functions that the short-lived animals don't have. Couldn't we take one of these animals and add certain things to their diets or give them injections to make them live a lot longer just by changing the things you just mentioned?
Well, one hopes to be able to do that. We don't know how to do it yet very well.
In other words, if we could get a DNA repair kit for a mouse, we could potentially get a mouse to live 40 or 50 years.
Yes.
Are there any living things that don't seem to age at all?
There are few living things that don't age. Sea anemones, for example, do not age. They've been kept for 70 or 80 years without any sign of aging.
Any reason? Anyone?
No, nobody knows why that's so. They haven't really been studied in those terms.
How about some of these cell cultures? You're always reading in the newspaper that they're taking cells out of skin and they're growing it in test tubes. Do these cells seem like they're aging?
They seem to have a finite lifespan. If you take skin cells and let them divide in a dish, they'll divide about 50 or 60 times and then gradually become senescent. This is called senescence under glass. That's why I say there's probably a clock in each cell as well as...
Sounds like a dish you get in a restaurant, senescence under glass.
Yeah.
You know, getting back to the sea anemones and the fact that they don't seem to age, how come the world isn't filled up with sea anemones just reproducing? If they're not aging, they're not dying off, what's happening?
Well, they die accidental deaths by predators and so forth. It's the same way with people beyond 90 to 95. If you look at the survival curve of people beyond 90 or 95, they're not dying so much of cancer or heart disease. They're dying of accidents. That's the main cause of death in advanced age. Just like, for example, restaurant drinking glasses. They don't have an immortal lifespan. They're broken at a constant rate. And so you can draw a survival curve for that. The shape of that curve is the same way as the shape of the survival curve of sea anemones or people who are already 92 or 95. Accidents.
Do you foresee in the future any unified theory of life extension or aging? In other words, are we ever going to be able to come up with one vaccine which, if injected, or one pill that will stop the aging process?
It's hard to know whether we'll ever stop it. We can already slow it down by diet, and we can probably slow it down further with other methods that are now being developed. I don't foresee stopping it or reversing it in the near future.